How's it going, y'all? Today I'm going to be drinking Bulleit Bourbon for the first time, and I'm going to be giving a full review to the brand's original standard variety. Bulleit is a brand of Kentucky-made bourbons and whiskeys that was first introduced in 1995, but which supposedly has their roots all the way back in the 1800s with the original founders' great-grandfathers' original bourbon recipe or something along those lines. It's a cute story, but one that I doubt to the fullest extent. But what I don't doubt is that Bulleit, as a brand, may very well be a high-quality bourbon brand, as I have heard a lot of good things about their alcohol products over the last couple years or so. But will their products actually be something that I personally like? That I'm not so sure of. Will I like it? Will I not? Will I enjoy drinking Bulleit Bourbon for the first time today? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. What I have with me, as said, is the original standard variety of Bulleit Bourbon. And what I have with me in precise is the Bulleit Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, as they call it. This 375 milliliter bottle cost me $17.95 at my local liquor store. And for that price, I got a bourbon with an ABV of 45%, a proof of 90, and one with a mash bill that contains 68% corn, 28% rye, and 4% malted barley, which should make this bourbon right here one of the highest in rye bourbons I will have ever tried up until this point in time, possibly making this a more unique experience than not for me flavor-wise. I hope so, at least. That's to be found out, I do suppose. Without further ado, after I thank the sponsor of today's video, I should probably go ahead and quickly cover the look of the bottle itself. Then I should probably go ahead and get the cap all off, go ahead and smell Bulleit Bourbon for the first time, and then after that, I'm thinking I should probably go ahead and pour some in a glass, find out just how it is, what it's like, and what I think of it, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and pour some more in a glass, see how it is as a mixer, and then once I'm done drinking to the fullest extent, once I've gotten all of the alcohol that I want to enjoy during this video today, I will then give you guys my final thoughts on this variety right here, on Bulleit Bourbon as a brand based off this one experience at least, and I'll also give this variety a numerical rating as well. But first off, as said, before anything, I first off need to thank the sponsor of today's video, which actually just so happens to be me, as my new poetry book, Poems to Read While Smoking Cigarettes, is out and available now. The poems within my new poetry book, Poems to Read While Smoking Cigarettes, they're not good poems by any means, but they are good poems to read while smoking cigarettes. And if you guys are interested in checking out my new poetry book, of course, I do highly recommend you do so at the links in the description and comments down below. It's available now for $14.99 on Amazon, and it is a book that I do highly recommend you check out if you are so inclined to do so. Make sure to go check it out if y'all are interested. And now with the sponsored segment of this video all done, I do suppose without further ado, it is time to go ahead and take a look at the, well, look at the bottle of the original standard Bulleit Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey variety that I have with me today. And we can tell at a glance, they're trying to go with a very rustic look for this bottle. An engineered look by all means, but a engineered rustic look for sure. And the reason why I say they're going for a rustic look is because this is really just flat glass with a label on it that wraps all the way around just like that, but has ridges to it and has some coloring going on that is really trying to make all of this look a little bit more rustic in ye olde style than not. Bulleit as a brand is really trying to drive home their cute story that their original recipe originated in the 1800s. Personally, I doubt it. I think it's a cute story and that's about all it is, but either way, they're really trying to run with that, and to help that, they're going with a very rusticated design for their bottles. And it is a overall pretty continuous design throughout their entire lineup. You'll see a pretty similar design no matter if it's this variety or their rye variety, or if it's their bottled in bond variety. You'll see a pretty similar design between all of their bottles that are all very similarly rusticated, I think is really the right way of putting it. in general bottle shape, we can see that this is a pretty small bottle. After all, it only contains 375 milliliters of bourbon whiskey, and we can see the front of it is a little bit wider than not. But it's not this wide all the way around, as if we flip it to the side, it's much more thin than not. This looks a little bit more like a flask, a bit too big to be a flask in my opinion, but it looks a little bit more like a ye olde style flask than not, which I think is absolutely by design as well. We can see the lid itself right up here is really just a lid, and then it immediately goes into the flask design of the bottle. And I do suppose, without further ado, I should probably go and cover the details on the lid itself, as there is some stuff going on, and there's actually a market segmentation spiel on the wrap that goes around the black lid on top of this bottle. On that wrap, we can see there are a bunch of dull gold details on a black background. And it just reads, years ago, I set out to recreate my great-great-grandfather's signature high rye whiskey. I am proud to say I succeeded. I present to you Bulleit Bourbon and Bulleit Rye. Tom Bulleit, which is the original founder of Bulleit as a brand, if I remember correctly. And we could see some designs on the top and the bottom of this market segmentation spiel, just trying to make it look like it fits in with the general cap design a little bit more so than not. Overall, that's very much a market segmentation spiel. They're really trying to hit home with the rusticness, with the ye old styleness of this bottle by saying, yeah, this is my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather's recipe, and I wanted to recreate it, and so as such, I've done that successfully. They're really trying to sell home that this is a rustic product, a ye olde product, and that it's a quality product as well with that market segmentation spiel. And while it really is all marketing, in my personal opinion, it is a very good market segmentation spiel nonetheless, if you ask me. That's really all that's going on with the cap up here, and so as such, let's go ahead and move on to the actual details on the bottle itself. I've already described the general shape of the bottle, but I haven't described some of the embossment on the glass of the bottle itself. This is something that I really like seeing. I love seeing embossment and details that are actually etched into the glass itself, and that's exactly what we're seeing with this bottle right here. Right up here, we can see it just says Bulleit right there, B-U-L-L-E-I-T, just right there embossed onto the glass of the bottle itself, which in my opinion is a fantastic look. That's a look I really like seeing. This is a custom bottle just for this brand. Absolutely like seeing that. Just says Bulleit Bourbon, or just Bulleit as a brand name right there. Doesn't say bourbon or anything like that kind of thing. So yeah, it just says Bulleit right there. Then under that we get a little bit of a line right there, and then under that we get some more text that just reads Frontier Whiskey. You know, when I think of the Frontier, I don't really think Kentucky personally. I think, like, let's say, like Nebraska or Omaha, or I think like Colorado or Utah. That's what I think when I think Frontier. I don't really think Kentucky, in all honesty. But once again, they're really trying to drive home the rusticness, the ye olde style of this whiskey, supposedly at least. I personally find it to be a cute but very doubtful story, as said. But you know, it just says Bulleit right here embossed on the glass, and then it just says Frontier Whiskey right there. And with this text below the actual brand, they're really trying to drive home the ye olde rusticness of it. And then underneath this text, we just get 4 dots right there embossed on the glass once again. And then below that, we get the Bulleit Bourbon label sticker itself, which in my opinion is a pretty nice look. On the sticker itself, there is a little bit of embossment for the Bulleit Bourbon text itself, and we can see as a general background, we get a, I would have to say, reddish, orange sort of color scheme. It's a little bit light in the middle right here kind of thing, trying to emphasize the name brand itself, and it gets a little bit darker towards the edges, and we can see that this sticker itself has crinkle cut edges, trying to make this look a little bit more rustic than not. We can see those crinkle cut edges go all the way around, even where the label itself ends. And within those crinkle cut edges, we can see, as said, that sort of dark orange background, or medium orange background, I guess is really really the right way of putting it. It's dark orange compared to where it gets light in the center right here, though. And right within all of that, we can see there is a border of a black detailed design right there. Sort of an old-styled border, I would say. Not just a line by any means. There's some details to it that are trying to make this look a little bit more old than not. And within that border, it just reads in black, distilled and aged in the Bulleit family tradition, Bulleit Bourbon, which, in my opinion, the whole rustic styling and everything like that is kind of lost when you have Bulleit with a trademark on the end right there. Like, if you really wanted to go for the whole rustic styling and everything like that kind of thing, Bulleit wouldn't have a trademark on the very end of it, but that's kind of exactly what's going on. And so you kind of lose some of the rusticness of the entire bottle. The whole bottle kind of loses some aura, I guess is really the right way of putting it, with that trademark sort of design right there, right next to the Bulleit text. But I'm like, hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. But yeah, distilled and aged in the Bulleit family tradition, quote unquote, cute story, bro. It just says Bulleit Bourbon right there. This is all embossed. And then under that, it just says Frontier Whiskey. They're really trying to drive home the rusticness of this whiskey, the non-existent rusticness of this whiskey. And then to the side of that, it just says 45% alcohol per volume or by volume. 375 milliliters right there. And then under that, it just says Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, just right there. And then under that, we get some more text, and it just reads, made using our family's high rye mash bill and pure Kentucky limestone filtered water. And then below that, we get the border that I mentioned on the top right here, on the very bottom, and we get that crinkle cut once again. And that's pretty much all we get on the front of this bottle of bourbon whiskey. Not a particularly complex design in my personal opinion, and I think that is intentional. By losing details and by making a more simplistic design, in my opinion, you can more easily make a design look rustic. And that is very much what they've done today. There's details to the bottle that I think are worth mentioning. All of the details I've mentioned are worth mentioning because they all add up to making this bottle what it is and everything like that kind of thing. But at a glance, this is very much that of a simple looking bottle of bourbon whiskey. Nothing too crazy going on. But because it is so simple, it just at a glance looks more rustic and looks like it stands out on the shelf just a little bit more so than maybe the other varieties that have labels all over them, like Aristocrat whiskey or like, let's say, Jack Daniels or something like that kind of thing. Overall, I think the front of this bottle is engineered to look rustic, it's engineered to look simple, it's engineered to look good, and I think they have succeeded in many of those different ways. Would I classify the look of the front of this bottle as being a truly, genuinely beautiful design? I don't think it's bad looking by any means. I actually really like the look of this bottle, personally speaking at least. Would I classify it as being a truly beautiful design? Not really, but I've seen far worse in regards to beauty when it comes to alcohol designs, and this is certainly not the worst I've seen, and I think it's overall a pretty nice looking design and a very utilitarian one that is really good for marketing at that. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and mention one of my favorite details about the entire bottle design, which is the fact that the label itself right here, which looks like it wouldn't wrap around, actually does indeed wrap around. Yes, I love seeing that. I love seeing this label itself right here wrap all the way around the bottle, and it has kind of an angle on the front of it, and it keeps that angle going all the way around. I love seeing that. That is a nice detail that I like seeing, and it also does a good job of making this bottle look a little bit more rustic than not. You know, in the 1800s, if people were making bourbon and they were slapping a label on it, they just go, yeah, it's all good enough kind of thing. And I think that's their thought process for this sort of design. It's meant to look lazy and ye-olde style on purpose intentionally, and that was, in my opinion, very much a good business decision. But let's go ahead and actually cover the details of the back of the label, though. We can see this ends right here, and then we get another border just over here with that crinkle cut continuing all the way around. And we can see, we just get all of the government details, warning labels, barcode, and everything like that kind of thing. Just says, bottled by Bulleit Frontier Whiskey, Plainfield, Illinois. What? No. Bulleit Frontier, maybe Bulleit as a company is headquartered in Illinois? But this says Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, made by a company located in Illinois. I mean, like, granted, like, Bulleit Bourbon got bought out, like, 2 years after their existence by Seagrams, and now they're owned by Diageo, which is another drinks company, I believe, is who they're owned by now. So, I mean, like, it's not really saying much. I mean, like, this is not a family-owned distillery or anything like that kind of thing. I mean, like, maybe still family-made, as in the family is still in control of the production of their whiskey or something like that, but the brand itself is not owned by them anymore. They got bought out pretty early on. But distilled by Bulleit Frontier Whiskey, Plainfield, Illinois. Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Illinois? We're just going to move on from that. That seems pretty sus to me, but we're just going to move on from that. Just has a government warning saying that you shouldn't drink and drive, and saying that women should not drink alcohol during pregnancy, which does make sense. Just says 21 plus, except U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, which are both 18 plus. Deadass? I didn't know that. I didn't know the U.S. Virgin Islands were 18 plus for alcohol, and I didn't know Puerto Rico was 18 plus as well. I thought it was 21, like, across the entirety of the United States, but no, 18 plus in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. I had no idea. Like, actually, I didn't. That is good to know. That's very educational. I had no idea about that. You can get money back for the bottle in some states. Just says recycle it. It just has some stuff going on, has their website, which doesn't work. I tried to look at it, it doesn't work. And then we just get the serving size. On the back of this bottle, we actually get the serving size for the bourbon, which I love seeing. I love seeing some of the like servings per container, and I love seeing what they recommend as a serving size and how many carbohydrates and stuff like that kind of thing, and how many calories are in each designated serving size. I really enjoy seeing the serving facts for different alcohols, but as it's not a requirement for that to be shown on bottles of alcohol in the United States, it's not something everything has, so I really do appreciate that Bulleit Bourbon doesn't need to have that. It just reads, serving facts, serving size, 1.5 fluid ounces, 44 milliliters, servings per container is 8.5, amount per serving, alcohol by volume is 45%, fluid ounces of alcohol is 0.7, calories is 110, carbohydrates is 0 grams, fat is 0 grams, and protein is 0 grams. And then under the serving facts, we get the barcode right there. And then below the label right here, we get some numbers and whatnot. And that is pretty much all that's going on with the look of this bottle as a whole. Overall, very rustic look, very, in my opinion, clean, simple, ye olde style look that, hey, is pretty good in my personal opinion, but definitely engineered to look this way. No question in my mind. They're trying to pump up the fake rusticness of this brand to the fullest extent. Once again, as said, cute story, bro, but that's all it is. That's all it is. And that's my general impression of the history of Bulleit Bourbon. Doesn't matter, though, if it's actually a good product. So without further ado, I do suppose let's quickly take a look at the bottom of the bottle, which we can see 375 milliliters right there. No other details going on. And now let's go ahead and get this plastic on the cap itself all off, and let's go and smell Bulleit Bourbon for the very first time. Let's see if I can get this off without having to get my knife out. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think I need to grab my knife. So let me get my Kershaw Scallion out of my pocket, and let's go ahead and just do a little bit of that. I'm pretty bad at getting like the plastic wrappers all off of like alcohol bottles and stuff like that kind of thing. So I always make sure to have my knife on me when I'm drinking and trying new alcohol, so I can make sure that I can actually get everything off in the way I want to get it off and everything like that kind of thing without having to struggle and whatnot, especially since I didn't see like an obvious pull tab on this bottle. Having my knife was definitely a good idea in my opinion. There we go. Trying to get it off. There we go. All right, I got it off. More so than not, I will take that. No complaints on my behalf. Maybe I should have grabbed a thumbnail before I got the plastic all off, but I did not. It is what it is. I'm going to go and put the trash in my backpack. Cannot be littering, of course. Let's go and put my knife away now, and let's go and not nick my finger. And without further ado, let's go ahead and just grab myself a quick thumbnail real quick before the sun sets too much. And then after that, let's go ahead and smell Bulleit Bourbon for the first time. Let's grab a quick thumbnail real quick. Well, hopefully one of those will do as a thumbnail. Well, hopefully one of those will do as a thumbnail for this video. We will find out. It took a couple moments to get a thumbnail, so hopefully one of those will work. Hopefully one of those will work. Hopefully one of those will work. We will find out. We will find out. But what is the smell of Bulleit Bourbon actually like? Well, let's go ahead and get the plastic cap all off. And let's go ahead and smell this bourbon for the first time today. Let's see just what it smells like. What's it gonna smell like? What's it gonna smell like? Smells different right off the bat. There we go, though. Got the cap all off. It was being a bit tough for a second there. Okay, well, yeah, it definitely smells like whiskey, in my personal opinion. Initial scent profile is that of a... The initial scent profile, in my opinion, is very much that of a sweet, creamy, sort of caramel, brown sugar, slightly chocolate, a little bit of chocolate. I'm gonna need a minute. Interesting. So, in the bottle itself, the Bulleit Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey Original Variety has a little bit of an alcohol smell to it. You know, there's a little bit of that paint thinner scent in there. Doesn't smell bad. It's just there, kind of thing. And then I would say you also get that of a... Yeah, I would say it smells very smooth. This smells creamy and smooth. And it is that in specific of a, I would say, sweet, creamy, smooth, caramel, nutty, brown sugar smell kind of thing. Maybe with the slightest bit of dark chocolate in there. That's what it smells like right out of the bottle. Let's go ahead and pour some in my glass I have with me today, my Copo Americano. And let's go ahead and see what it smells like in the glass as well. Because in my experience, alcohol smells pretty good in the bottle and smells pretty good in the glass. But they smell different sometimes in the two different containers. So let's go and pour myself some. It might have been a bit too much, but that's how much I poured nonetheless. You know, there's no such thing as too much alcohol. No, there is too much. There is a such thing as too much alcohol. Alcohol poisoning is real. Dying from alcohol is real. Overdosing on alcohol is real. Remember to drink in moderation, folks. Drink in moderation. Don't be getting no alcohol poisoning. That ain't no big baller move. That ain't no big baller move. Don't be doing that. There is a such thing as too much alcohol. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. You know, I got my red Solo cup full of water with me today. It is actually water. Like, I actually do have water in my red Solo cup. And let's go ahead and smell the Bulleit Bourbon in the glass I have. And I would say in the glass, it definitely smells a little bit more potent in my personal opinion. I would have to say I would have to say it smells more potent. There's that sort of paint thinner, alcohol smell going on, a little bit more kind of thing. Not bad, it's just there. So there's that smell going on, and that's kind of gotten a little bit more intense since pouring this bourbon out of the bottle. The sweetness has been toned down as well, along with, I would say, the smoothness of it. And overall, the smell I'm getting is very much that of a alcohol, sweet, savory scent with details of alcohol paint thinner, not in a bad way, it's just there. And then after that, you get a mildly sweet, I would have to say, nutty, creamy scent, slightly nutty, creamy scent, with definitely a little bit of dark chocolate, caramel, and brown sugar / molasses as well, kind of thing. And I would have to say that's very much what the smell of the Bulleit Bourbon is like in a glass. It is getting towards sunset, and even though it is not cold out here by any means, the bugs, they do like coming out more towards sunset than not. And I don't want to get any mosquito bites, so I'm going to go ahead and put this flannel on, as it has cooled off just a little bit since the very beginning of this video. So I'm just going to put this flannel on, and before I go ahead and take a sip, we're going to grab a thumbnail with the glass that I just poured. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and get to drinking Bulleit Bourbon for the first time. Did I button this properly? I think I did. Yes. No, I believe I did. All right, let's grab a thumbnail real quick, if I possibly can. Well, hopefully one of those will do as a thumbnail for the video if one of the ones I got previously didn't work. Without further ado, let's go ahead and take my first sip of Bulleit Bourbon, and let's go ahead and find out just how this stuff is, what this stuff is like, and how it actually is, and what I think of it. I haven't drank any straight liquor in about a week. Let's find out how it is. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying, Taste is good, a bit rough. I took like the tiniest sip ever. And initial flavor profile kind of tastes like a cow tail. Like a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of caramel, cream, nutty. Yeah, this kind of tastes like a cow tail. Like, I don't know, I don't think cow tails exist everywhere, but it's like one of my favorite like childhood candies, and they're fantastic. I'll have to put up a photo of a cow tail right here if I remember to do so, because I think cow tails, I don't know if they're like even available all across the United States. They might be a regional thing. I have no idea. But yeah, here's what a cow tail looks like. Here is what a cow tail is. They're really good candy, and in my opinion, some whiskeys kind of taste like them, and this one, just based off the initial first tiny sip, kind of tastes like a cow tail. Definitely, I can say, there's a bit of a burn. I think as I continue drinking, I will get used to that burn, and I think this whiskey is going to smooth out a bit, for sure, but initially, in my first two sips, quite rough, I gotta admit. Bulleit Bourbon, for the first two sips I took, quite rough. Whoa, yeah. That got my, whoa. That's going to clear up my sinuses. Oh my God, my nose just started burning. Holy crap. This stuff's a bit rough. Yeah, overall flavor profile, though, I gotta admit, the flavor profile, I do quite like it. I don't know how much depth there truly is to the flavor profile, as I have only started drinking, but the overall flavor I'm getting initially is very much that of a, I would say, sweet and savory, spicy flavor with undertones of a sweet, creamy caramel. And then under that there is, I would say, my nose is itchy. I would say under that there is, my nose is still itchy. But yeah, sweet, creamy caramel with I feel like a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of, and a good amount of the brown sugar molasses. This is kind of what I'm getting initially, I feel like. Let's keep drinking. Overall mouthfeel is very smooth. Very, very, very smooth. Yeah, overall mouthfeel is very good. It very much has a smooth, creamy mouthfeel, in my personal opinion. Has almost a sort of milky mouthfeel to it. That's how smooth the mouthfeel is when it's rolling over your tongue. It's a very sort of milky mouthfeel, in my opinion. Almost like a hot chocolate made with milk or something along those lines. And just based off the flavor of the Bulleit Bourbon, just right off the bat, I think this stuff would pair pretty well with hot chocolate, possibly with some coffees as well, but definitely with hot chocolate. I think Bulleit Bourbon would be fantastic with. Yeah, no, I think it would be really good with hot chocolate. Excuse me. I mean, like, it's solid. It's solid. I haven't really drank enough to see if there's any flavor undertones that I haven't noticed as of yet, so I think I'm just going to kind of sit back, relax, and just kind of just sip away for a few minutes. I think that's really the best thing I can do. But just initial impressions. Roughness, it's rough. The Bulleit Bourbon, the original variety that I'm drinking today, it's rough. It's rougher than you would expect for 45%, in my opinion at least. It's definitely a bit heavy on there for sure. I would say mouthfeel-wise, it's got a very milky, almost sort of creamy, smooth mouthfeel, in my personal opinion. And taste-wise, a little bit of sweet, a little bit of savory, creamy, caramel, brown sugar molasses, a little bit of chocolate sort of flavor, I would say. That's what I'm noticing initially. But what will I notice as I continue drinking? Well, I can definitely say it's getting me a buzz as well. You know, I haven't even had, I think, like half of what I poured for myself, and I'm already getting a buzz. Like, that was probably what I've drank so far is probably, like, what, maybe half a shot? Just getting me a buzz, yeah. Granted, I haven't had any alcohol in the last 24 hours, so I mean, like, that'll do it, but yeah, wow. Definitely getting me a buzz. It's interesting. On one hand, I feel like the Bulleit Bourbon doesn't really have much going on with the flavor, and I feel like the flavor I get is kind of the flavor I get. Not in a bad way, the flavor is good, but there's not the most in the world going on kind of thing. But then on the other hand, it's like every sip I take, I feel like I'm missing something. So I feel like there is something else going on in there. And that something else is something that I need to be patient and drink to notice. There's no sort of fruity flavor, nothing like that. It is very heavy on the caramel, chocolate. I feel like there's a slight nutty flavor in there. I feel like that's kind of what I'm missing. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what it is. And I don't know if it's the high rye content in this bourbon whiskey, but the creaminess is just next level kind of thing. There is a huge amount of a sort of milky creaminess in the flavor. Like, genuinely, I would describe this, if I had to describe this bourbon as tasting most similar to any real-life product that is not alcohol, I would first off say cowtail. Tastes like a cowtail, as previously mentioned. I would then say hot chocolate. It kind of has a sort of hot chocolate, like a really nice, high-quality hot chocolate flavor to it kind of thing. That milkiness, a little bit of chocolate, and there's some other aspects going on kind of thing. Like some of the hot chocolate I've had before has a sort of like brown sugar sort of flavor to it as well kind of thing. Like a really nice like boutique hot chocolate. I'm kind of getting that vibe from the Bulleit Bourbon. Pairings with it, I think this would be really good with probably Coca-Cola, Pepsi, of course. I think this would be solid with some but not all root beers. And I also think this would be solid with Dr. Pepper when it comes to pairings. Is that nutty flavor really in there, or is it kind of just my imagination? It's not nearly as much of an upfront nutty flavor as something like, let's say, the Wild Turkey 101. In my opinion, the Wild Turkey 101 very much has that of a sort of almond flavor to it. And it could very well just be this, giving me a flavor that I think I'm getting from the bourbon, but I'm really not getting. So maybe I should finish this and then finish drinking my alcohol, but very, very, very interesting. I can say, based off of what I've had so far, that Bulleit Bourbon is a high-quality, nice-tasting product. I've heard good things about it, and so as such, I'm not terribly surprised to be saying this. It is a nice-tasting, high-quality product. Is it the most interesting in the world to drink? It's certainly more interesting than some other whiskeys I've had before. It's definitely more interesting than Jack Daniel's, which, granted, isn't a very high standard for, like, whiskeys to drink straight, in all honesty. Jack Daniel's is like pretty mid to drink straight in my personal opinion. But I would say it's slightly above the level of, like, let's say the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond when it comes to like flavor kind of thing. And it's more towards, I would say it's more interesting than Buffalo Trace. I personally find the flavor to be more interesting than Buffalo Trace. Oh, this is more expensive, of course. I would say it's most similar to the Four Roses small batch that I've had before. Now, I don't know a lot about whiskey. I'm doing a review of whiskey today, learning more about whiskey, but I am by no means a whiskey connoisseur. I haven't tried like hundreds of different varieties of whiskey, as is obvious by the fact that I'm drinking Bulleit Bourbon for the first time today. So take what I say with a grain of salt, but I'm kind of feeling like it's kind of like there's definitely like aspects that I feel like are similar to the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, but it's not identical by any means. And I feel like there's aspects that are close to, like, let's say the Four Roses small batch, but it's not identical by any means. yeah, I mean, like, overall, a solid product, and one that I feel like is similar yet different from whiskeys I've tried in the past. Yeah, yeah. As predicted, as I have continued drinking, it has definitely gotten a little bit smoother, for sure. As I've gotten used to the liquor, as I've gotten used to that alcohol hit, the alcohol definitely has gotten smoother when it's going into my system and everything like that kind of thing. But it does still have a burning sensation to it. It does still have a little bit of roughness to it, no question in my mind. So I wouldn't describe the Bulleit Bourbon as being the smoothest by any means. Definitely not the smoothest bourbon I've ever tried. That is for sure. And I think that kind of goes in line with what they want from a product when it comes to their brand image. Bulleit Bourbon, it's got this rustic brand image. And something that I think is essential about products that want to market themselves as being rustic is having imperfections. If you make a product that is marketed as being rough, or that is marketed as being rustic, and it's a perfect product that tastes super smooth and just perfect in every way kind of thing, it's not really rustic now, is it, kind of thing. You've got to have some imperfections for it to be rustic. It's like an old sign in a barn. If it ain't rusty, it ain't rustic kind of thing. If it ain't a little rough around the edges, it ain't rustic. I think is really the right way of putting it. And I think that's something they're going with the Bulleit Bourbon, in that they're possibly purposely making it a little bit rougher than it otherwise might have to be, kind of thing. And I think that roughness is something that people do like. So I think that is not only an intentional marketing and business decision, but I think it's an intentional decision in the way that that's something that people want from a product as well. I think people want that throat hit from the Bulleit Bourbon. Yeah. Overall, flavor-wise, though, I'm not really noticing anything more than what I've already mentioned. I am confident in saying that there is that nutty flavor in there. I don't think it was just the bug repellent I was having. I think it's more than just that. I personally do think there is a little bit of a nutty flavor in there. It's more almond than anything, but it is kind of a mix of like a hazelnut toffee and almond sort of flavor. Kind of like Heath Bar-esque to an extent. So yeah, no, now that I've really started drinking it and gotten into it a bit, most comparable non-alcohol things: Cowtail, Heath Bar, hot chocolate. I would say. In that order, to be precise. And I would say the general flavor of the Bulleit Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey is very much that of a certainly sweeter than not, yet savory and spicy flavor, with details of I would say a sweet vanilla, milky, cream, caramel flavor with a slight undertone of dark chocolate that comes across a bit milky due to the milkiness of the flavor. And then under that, there is a very slight sort of nutty, almond, hazelnut, toffee-like flavor. And then under that, I'm getting a bit of brown sugar and molasses. And that is very much what the flavor of the original Bulleit Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey is actually like. That's what the flavor of this whiskey right here is like, in my personal opinion. Definitely a slightly different flavor, yet familiar flavor. that I've had bits and pieces of from other whiskeys, but nothing entirely like this. Nothing entirely like this. Would I define the Bulleit Bourbon as being a dynamic tasting product? An interesting tasting product, especially for my first experience, because it definitely took a while for all of the flavors to hit, and I really had to think about it just for a little bit. But would I describe it as being a truly dynamic flavor? More interesting than not, but dynamic, no. More interesting flavor than not, with a bunch of intricacies, a bunch of undertones that you have to think about, but not a truly dynamic flavor in my personal opinion. But at the same time, I do kind of regret saying that, because I don't know. Let me finish this off real quick, and I'll determine whether it's actually a dynamic flavor or not. Ooh, that roughness. Oh, there's a bit of roughness in there. I would say the flavor is dynamic in some ways. It's not dynamic like some other alcohol I've tried before, where like sip to sip you get a very different flavor kind of thing. I would say it's dynamic in the way that you sip. If you take a really small sip, you're going to get some flavors some way. If you take a bigger sip, you're going to get some flavors some way. And if you take a medium sip, you're going to get the flavors a different way kind of thing. If you take a big sip, you're going to get more roughness. You're going to get, certain flavors being more prominent due to that roughness. But if you take a small sip, you're going to get the flavors in a different way kind of thing. Some whiskey, in my opinion, yeah, it might just get more rough, but you kind of just get the same flavor overall. This whiskey, on the other hand, depending on how you sip, depending on the roughness and everything like that kind of thing of the sip, of how large of a sip you take, you might get a entirely different flavor profile from what you could get otherwise. Not entirely different, but just you might miss some of the flavor profile. So I think a good midpoint is to say that the Bulleit Bourbon is somewhat dynamic. In my opinion, the flavor is interesting. I personally really like the flavor. I think it's a good flavor. And I will say the flavor is somewhat dynamic. Not the most dynamic, but somewhat dynamic, I think, is really the right way of putting it. And overall, general impressions on the Bulleit Bourbon that I tried today. Is it a good bourbon to drink straight? Is it a bourbon that I enjoy drinking straight? I'm going to have to say yes and yes. I don't regret buying this bourbon right here. I think it is a solid product. It's one that personally I have enjoyed drinking today, and it's one that I am looking forward to finding out if it's a good mixer or not, because that's what we're doing next. We're going to find out if this is a good mixer or not next with some lemon-flavored carbonated water from Wegmans, and we're going to be mixing up a little bit of a whiskey highball, I do think. But final thoughts on Bulleit Bourbon as something to drink straight first off. It's a bit rough. It's definitely rougher than even some stronger whiskeys are. Like, let's say the Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. That's 100 proof kind of thing. In my opinion, the Evan Williams Bottled in Bond is smoother than Bulleit Bourbon, even though it's 5%, 10 proof stronger. Yeah, the Bulleit Bourbon is pretty rough for the strength, if you ask me. The flavor, in my opinion, is really nice. I really like the flavor of it. I think it would pair really well with some hot chocolate, personally speaking. Also with a cowtail and with a Heath bar as well, kind of thing. I think that would be pretty banger. And yeah, overall, definitely a bit rough for the strength it is, but has a really nice flavor when drank straight. Slightly dynamic flavor, more interesting flavor than not, and is just a solid product to drink straight as a whole. It's not the most interesting bourbon I've ever tried, if you ask me, but it's up there. It's pretty good. And overall, as something to drink straight, I think it deserves a very solid 8 out of 10. I think it deserves a very solid 8 out of 10, especially given the price. Especially given the price kind of thing. I think an 8 out of 10 is definitely very deserving. Yeah. Let's find out how it is as a mixer. I am going to go ahead and get the cap off, and I'm going to pour a little bit more into my glass right here, and we're going to find out how it is as a mixer. So how much do I want to pour? I'll pour about that amount, and then I'm going to top the rest off with some lemon-flavored carbonated water, and we're going to find out how the Bulleit Bourbon does at making a whiskey highball. I love my whiskey highballs. They are my favorite whiskey mixed drink, and they are my most drank whiskey mixed drink as well. They're so simple to make, so easy to make. You just take some lemon-flavored carbonated water, and you just pour it on top of some whiskey. Super easy to make. and it's a very refreshing beverage with no added sugar besides the whiskey. So I'm curious to find out if the Bulleit Bourbon will make for a good whiskey highball. Will it or will it not? Let's go ahead and find out. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying, Meh. Yeah, I'd say pretty good. I'd say it does pretty good, kind of thing. Definitely with the roughness of the Bulleit Bourbon, in my opinion, you definitely want to be careful about how much you add to your mixed drinks. But within the glass I have, with the amount of carbonated water that I poured, the Bulleit Bourbon has smoothed over very much, which I really do like. But in my mixed drink, I can still very distinctly, taste a lot of the aspects of the Bulleit Bourbon. It's still very much there. The flavor profile is still there. It doesn't completely lose itself to the mixer by any means. There's definitely some alcohols that completely lose themselves to the mixer, which in my opinion is a good thing for things like vodka and for things like Everclear, for example. But for whiskey and whiskey mixed drinks, I feel like a lot of times you kind of still want some of the profile of the whiskey to be there, especially within a whiskey highball. And the Bulleit Bourbon, in my opinion, while it does very much get smoothed out by the carbonated water, and while you do lose some of the flavor profile, that sweetness is still there. There's still a little bit of that caramel as well, in my personal opinion, and overall it combines very well with the flavor of the lemon-flavored carbonated water, and overall makes for a decent mixer. In my opinion, not the greatest, not the absolute best whiskey mixer. I'm gonna have to say, honestly, one of the best mixers I've ever had as far as whiskeys go is probably Jack Daniel's. I personally believe that Bulleit Bourbon is designed to be drank straight. I don't think it's designed as a mixer kind of thing. Jack Daniel's, you can drink it straight, but honestly, it's designed as a mixer, frankly put, kind of thing. This is kind of my personal take. I don't think Bulleit Bourbon is as good as Jack Daniel's when it comes to whiskey mixers. But it's not bad in a whiskey highball. In fact, I would say it's pretty dang good in a whiskey highball, and I really like it in a whiskey highball. And I will definitely be making more whiskey highballs with my Bulleit Bourbon in the future, no question in my mind. Yeah, overall, a very solid beverage, if I do say so myself. So no complaints on my behalf. Whiskey highball made with Bulleit Bourbon. Is it good? I'm going to have to say, it certainly is. I'm going to have to say, there's a pretty solid beverage right here, if I do say so myself. Yeah. Whiskey highballs made with Bulleit Bourbon. They got a nice flavor to them. Not rough. Still taste a little bit of the whiskey through it. Really nice. Bulleit Bourbon makes for a good whiskey highball. As a mixer, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. And for an overall rating for Bulleit Bourbon, I think I'm going to give it a very solid 8 out of 10. I think I'll give it a very solid 8 out of 10 as an overall product, frankly put. Do I want another whiskey highball? I have plenty more carbonated water in my can, so, we still have some scheduled time left, so, maybe I'll have another. yeah, I think an overall deserving rating for the Bulleit Bourbon is that of an 8 out of 10. I think an 8 out of 10 is very deserving for what it is, for the price it is, and just for how it is in general, kind of thing. Final thoughts on Bulleit Bourbon as a brand. I'll start off with their marketing, I suppose. I think their marketing is really cute, but non-existent. It's all fake. I mean, like, their marketing exists, don't get me wrong, but their marketing is fake. It's not real. It's a lie. It's really cute. That's kind of my take on the brand's marketing, but they do a good job of pumping it up. They do a really good job of pumping it up. Like, it's cute marketing. It's all fake, but they do a really good job of pumping it up and everything like that kind of thing. The bottle looks really rustic. It looks really cool. It's got a bit of roughness to it kind of thing. This bourbon, it's a bit of rough around the edges, a bit rough as a whole kind of thing. But of course, for something rustic, you want it to be a bit rough around the edges. And I think they've done a good job at not only making that happen with the look of the bottle, but also making that happen with the actual flavor of the bourbon itself as well. So overall, I think their marketing, while it is very cute and just completely fake and everything like that kind of thing, it's good marketing. It's good branding kind of thing, and they've done a good job with the Bulleit Bourbon brand image, in my personal opinion. I think people would be much less interested in the brand, even if it was just as good as what I've described, if the marketing wasn't what it was, frankly. But if the marketing wasn't what it is, I think people would be a lot less interested in it. I think a lot of people have bought into the whole rusticness of the brand, and I think that's something that people really like about it. And I think the marketing overall is very good, even if it is all fake, which is my personal opinion. I do think it is all fake. Overall, though, as a product, yeah, no, solid. I mean, like, this is the only Bulleit bourbon. This is the only Bulleit alcohol product I have tried so far. But personally, I feel like it was worth my money. I feel like I've gotten an interesting experience, and I've had an experience today that I have very much enjoyed having. I've had a good experience today with the Bulleit Bourbon, and so overall, my general impression of Bulleit as a brand is very, very, very solid. I've heard a lot of good things as well about their other products besides just their standard variety. I've heard a lot of good things about the Bulleit Rye as well, which is like mostly rye, with very little malt or corn or something like that kind of thing. It's like over 60% rye or something like that kind of thing. I've heard really good things about that variety as well, and so that's something I definitely need to try in the future. But I've heard really good things about other Bulleit bourbon varieties. I've also got a bottled and bond variety, and I do like my bottled and bond stuff. I gotta admit, I don't know what it is about them, but I just keep buying them and I keep liking them. But they've got a variety of that too. Overall, yeah, no, Bulleit as a brand, yeah, it seems to me, based off this one experience at least, that they make a quality product. That's kind of my final thought. Seems to me like they make a quality product. Nothing insane, nothing crazy, but a good product. A good product. One that deserves an 8 out of 10 in my personal opinion. And my overall final thoughts on this specific variety from Bulleit Bourbon is that it has good packaging. It has a nice flavor, a interesting flavor, and a mildly dynamic flavor as well, kind of thing. And I am personally of the opinion that it's a solid quality product. I really like the flavor of it. I like the mouthfeel. The roughness is a bit much for me personally, but overall it's a solid product. And to me, yeah, deserves an 8 out of 10. Deserves an 8 out of 10. Final thoughts on Bulleit as a brand. Seems like they make quality products. Kind of my final thoughts on Bulleit as a brand. Just seems like they make quality products. And final thoughts on the variety of Bulleit bourbon I tried today. Seems like a good product to me. Ain't no complaints on my behalf, frankly put. Ain't no complaints on my behalf, frankly put. Yeah. Overall, good stuff. 8 out of 10 for what I drank today. 8 out of 10. I'm just kind of chilling now, though. We talked about the final thoughts. We've given the bourbon a numerical rating. You know, just chilling, honestly. Just chilling. I can't believe we're at almost an hour for the video, though. That's kind of crazy. Time has flown. I've really enjoyed myself. I've really enjoyed myself today. This has been a very solid experience, and overall, I'm very glad to have tried Bulleit Bourbon for the first time. If you guys have any recommendations for other whiskeys I should try in the future, whether it be bourbon or not, make sure to comment them down below, and make sure to let me know what you guys think of bourbon. Excuse me, that was an extremely satisfying burp. Make sure to let me know what you guys think of Bulleit Bourbon as well, is what I was trying to say there until I started burping. Man, it feels really nice out here, though. These last couple days in my local area, like, it's August, but it's starting to cool down at the night, during the nights a little bit kind of thing. It's supposed to get warmer again in the next couple days, but these last 3 days or so have been super nice. It's been, like, mid-80s, like, midday kind of thing. And, like, at night, it's been getting down into, like, the low 60s, which I think is supposed to get down to, like, 63 or 64 tonight. So it's like probably like high 70s right now in my local area. It feels great out here. This is like ideal, like drinking out on the back porch weather. For me personally, this is really nice. Like, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy drinking out on the back porch, no matter what the weather is, as long as it ain't raining on me. If I got an umbrella, ain't no biggie though. But as long as it ain't raining physically on me, I ain't got no beef. But nah, this is good weather. I'm just chilling. Don't feel cold. Don't feel warm. I just feel good. Man. No complaints on my behalf. Well, I think that's all I had to this drink. I do have a little bit more mix. You know, I might as well finish off my mixer. I don't want to waste any mixer. I'm already at home. It's not like I need to drive or anything tonight, so, you know. You know. I'd might as well have a little bit more. I'm buzzed, though. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very buzzed. The Bulleit Bourbon, that 45% ABV, it got me good. It is getting me good. It is getting me good. I have gotten pretty good today. I am buzzed. I wouldn't classify myself as being truly drunk. Excuse me. I wouldn't classify myself as being truly drunk. Especially after that burp. That burp kind of got rid of some of the buzz, honestly. But I'm definitely feeling pretty good right now. I'm definitely like, I've got a nice buzz go. I've got a nice buzz. I'm like 6 out of 10 right now. 6, 7. It's such a dead meme at this point, but I'm still gonna keep saying it. I keep saying Uganda Knuckles, Big Chungus, damn Daniel, look at those vans. Yo, y'all ever heard of the PewDiePie funny montage series? So, just continuing going with dead memes is kind of just like, that's a big ball of move, and so I'm just gonna keep going with the dead memes. So 6, 7. 6, 7. 6, 7. You know, I gotta admit, I think the Bulleit Bourbon would be a better purchase if it was $6 or $7 rather than $17.95. Would I personally much rather buy the Bulleit Bourbon that I had today over Evan Williams Bottled and Bond? Honestly, I mean, like, depends on what I want. If I want a quality bourbon with a more sort of like s'mores marshmallow flavor, I'm going for the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. But if I want more of a cowtail flavor, I'm going for the Bulleit Bourbon kind of thing. I'm going for the Bulleit Bourbon. But both are solid. I can't see myself buying one over the other, personally speaking. Both are solid. But yeah, that's all there was to my drink. That's all there was to all 2.5. I was about to say 3, but 2.5 in reality mixed drinks No, that was solid. That was solid. That was good. That was a good experience. I definitely enjoyed drinking Bulleit Bourbon for the first time today, and overall, 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 experience, frankly put. Yeah, no complaints on my behalf. Yeah, well, I think that's all the scheduled time we had for today's video. So I'm going to go and end this video right here. Appreciate y'all watching today's video. Of course, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to also check out my new poetry book, Poems to Read While Smoking Cigarettes, available now. Excuse me. In the description and comments down below, you can find the link to my new poetry book in the description and comments down below, along with also on screen right now as well. And yeah, make sure to go check out my new poetry book. Highly recommend, of course. It's a great book. It's a great purchase. Highly recommend. And I think that's just about all I wanted to say for this video today. And so as such, until the next one, y'all, stay safe and peace, and have a great one.